In the deep, suffocating humidity of West Africa, some sounds belong to the jungle. The drone of insects, the call of a distant bird, the rustle of leaves betraying a hidden life. And then there are sounds that tear through that fabric, sounds that signal the world has come undone. It began with a cry. Not a call, but a shriek. A thin, piercing sound of absolute terror that was answered, an instant later, by a chorus of explosive, frantic screams from every direction. The canopy erupted. 28 chimpanzees, a moment ago a peaceful family, were now a torrent of black fur and panic, crashing through the branches. But this was not a retreat. It was a mobilization. On the forest floor, something ancient and powerful was uncoiling from the leaf litter. An African rock python, a creature of shadow and patience, had made its move. Its target was the smallest member of the troop, an infant barely 6 months old. The mother's scream was one of grief and denial. But from the alpha male, there was a different sound. A deep, guttural roar that cut through the chaos. As the other chimpanzees looked to him, their panic subsided, replaced by something colder, something focused. This was not a moment of defense. The infant was already gone. This was the beginning of something else entirely. A coordinated, strategic, and utterly brutal response that would last for 4 agonizing hours. What unfolded in Tai National Park was not just a mobbing of a predator. It was a calculated act of retribution, an execution so methodical it forces us to ask a deeply unsettling question. Can animals feel the desire for revenge? This is the story of a family that became an army, of a hunt that became a vendetta, and of a 4-hour war that would forever change our understanding of the primate mind. This is the Tai National Park in the Ivory Coast. One of the last remaining primary rainforests in West Africa. It's an ancient world, a cathedral of colossal trees whose canopies are so dense they create a perpetual twilight on the forest floor below. The air here is thick, heavy with the smell of damp earth, decaying leaves, and the sweet perfume of 1,000 different flowers. It is a world of constant sound, a symphony of life where every rustle, every snap of a twig, can mean the difference between life and death. For generations, this has been the home of the Tai chimpanzees. They are one of the most studied primate groups on the planet, renowned for their intelligence, their complex social structures, and their unique tool-using culture. Our story centers on one particular community, a close-knit group of 28 individuals led by an alpha male researchers had named Kofi. Kofi is a formidable leader. He carries the history of his reign on his body, in the torn ear, the scar across his brow, the sheer muscular bulk that comes from years of defending his position. But his leadership is not just about brute strength. It's about intelligence, political savvy, and an ability to maintain the delicate balance of peace within the troop. His lieutenants, 2 other large males named Omar and Zola, are his trusted allies, forming the core of the group's power structure. And at the heart of the community are the mothers. Like Aya, a young female raising her first infant. For her, the world revolves around this tiny, fragile life. Her days are a cycle of nursing, grooming, and teaching, showing her infant which fruits are safe to eat, which branches can hold its weight, how to navigate the intricate social rules of the troop. Life here is a complex tapestry of alliances, rivalries, and deep emotional bonds. Grooming sessions are not just for hygiene, they are political acts, reinforcing friendships and calming tensions. Foraging is a communal effort, with scouts calling out to the others when they discover a bountiful fig tree. It is a society, in every sense of the word. But this intricate world exists under constant threat. Here, chimpanzees are not the only apex intelligence. They share this forest with leopards, crowned eagles, and a silent, patient killer that has haunted their evolutionary history for millennia, the African rock python. The stakes for Kofi and his troop are absolute. Their territory, their food sources, and the very lives of their young are a prize to be defended every single day. Long before the attack, the serpent's presence was known. It was a shadow in their world, an unseen threat that altered their behavior in subtle ways. The African rock python is a master of ambush. Growing up to 20 feet in length, it is a constrictor of immense power, capable of taking down prey as large as an antelope. It does not chase, it waits. Perfectly camouflaged amongst the fallen leaves and tangled roots, it can lie motionless for days, even weeks, a living trap waiting to be sprung. The Tai chimpanzees, with their long collective memory, understood this danger. Researchers observing Kofi's troop noted a specific area near a network of swampy streams that the chimps actively avoided. They would travel longer, more arduous routes to bypass it. The younger chimps were kept on a tighter leash here, hurried along with sharp barks from the adults if they lingered. This wasn't just instinct, it was learned behavior, a cultural knowledge of danger passed down through generations. There had been close calls before. Field notes from primatologist Christoph Bosch, who has studied these chimps for decades, describe a tense encounter months earlier. A young male, foraging for insects in a rotting log, had come face to face with the enormous snake. His terrified screams had brought the entire troop running. For nearly an hour, the males had displayed aggressively, yelling, throwing branches, and drumming on the resonant buttress roots of trees. It was a powerful show of force, a clear warning. The python, not yet committed to an attack, had slowly, silently, retreated back into the undergrowth. The chimps had won the standoff, but the incident left a mark. The troop's vigilance was heightened. Kofi was seen patrolling the group's periphery more often, his powerful frame a visible deterrent. The mothers, especially Aya, held their infants closer, often foregoing foraging on the ground to stay in the relative safety of the lower canopy. But the forest offers no true sanctuary. The python, too, has a long memory. It had seen the troop's most vulnerable members. It knew their routines, their foraging patterns. It had been rebuffed, but it was not deterred. It was simply waiting for a better opportunity, a moment of distraction. In the days leading up to the fatal attack, the atmosphere within the troop was strained. The usual playful calls of the juveniles were more subdued. Grooming sessions were shorter, more frantic. The chimps were on edge. They could feel the predator's presence, a cold spot in the warm jungle air. The snake was hunting, and the chimpanzees knew they were the prey. The question that hung in the humid air wasn't if the serpent would strike again, but when, and who would be its victim. The moment the world broke was one of utter banality. A ripe mango, hanging tantalizingly from a low branch, had captured Aya's attention. For just a few seconds, her focus shifted. Her infant, emboldened by a newfound confidence in its own legs, toddled 2 steps away, into a patch of sunlit moss. It was an infinitesimal distance. A space of no consequence. But in the world of predator and prey, it was a fatal gap. From the dark recess of a hollow log, the python exploded. It was not a slither, but a launch, a blur of muscle and scale covering the distance in less than a heartbeat. There was no sound, no warning. Just a silent, brutal efficiency. The infant's scream was the first and only signal that the pact of avoidance had been shattered. It was a sound that didn't belong to the natural world, a razor blade of pure terror that sliced through the jungle's ambient hum. The troop's reaction was volcanic. An instant wave of pandemonium and rage. The air filled with a cacophony of pant hoots, barks, and the deafening sound of fists and feet drumming against tree trunks. Females scooped up their young and fled to the highest branches, their cries raining down from the canopy. But the males charged forward. Led by Kofi, they converged on the scene, a wave of black fur and righteous fury. They arrived to a horrific sight. The python, immense and implacable, was already coiling around the small, limp body. The infant was silent now. The fight for its life was over before it had even begun. For a moment, the males stood frozen, their aggression momentarily stalled by the shocking finality of the scene. This is the critical juncture, the point where most animal groups would retreat, ceding their dead to the victor. But something different happened here. Kofi stared at the scene, his massive chest heaving. Researchers who witnessed the event described a visible shift in his demeanor. The frenzied rage in his eyes cooled, replaced by something far more terrifying, a cold, focused intelligence. He let out a deep, rolling WRAAA bark, a specific vocalization that was not an alarm call but a command. The chaotic noise from the other males stopped. Every eye turned to the alpha. A silent order had been given and understood. The strategy formed in an instant. This was no longer a rescue. It was an extermination. The troop split with practiced efficiency. Omar and Zola, the lieutenants, led a contingent of younger males to form a wide, unbreakable perimeter around the python's retreat, the hollow log. They blocked every exit. The siege had begun. Meanwhile, Kofi directed the others to gather ammunition. Branches were ripped from trees, not small twigs for display, but heavy, club-like limbs. Stones were dug from the riverbed. This was preparation for war. High above, the females and young were no longer just a terrified audience. They became lookouts, their high-pitched calls tracking the python's slightest movement within the log, relaying intelligence to the soldiers on the ground. The mother, Aya, did not flee. From a branch directly overlooking the log, she began a new vocalization. Not a scream of terror, but a deep, rhythmic, heartbreaking moan of grief. A sound that would provide the harrowing soundtrack for the next 4 hours, constantly reminding the males of what they had lost, and what they were there to avenge. The battle that followed was not a brief, explosive affair. It was a grueling, 4-hour siege, a methodical deconstruction of an ancient predator, driven by a chillingly modern-looking strategy. The first phase was psychological. The chimpanzees, armed with their makeshift clubs and rocks, began a relentless barrage on the python's fortress. The sound echoed through the forest, a rhythmic, percussive drumming of wood and stone against the hollow log. It was a constant assault, designed to intimidate, to exhaust, and to prevent the snake from digesting its meal or planning an escape. For over an hour, this continued. The males took turns, conserving their energy. Kofi directed the assault, pointing with his chin, barking short commands to reposition his soldiers. They were probing for weakness, testing the structure of the log, learning the enemy's position from the muffled sounds within. The python was trapped, but it was far from helpless. It was in its element, a dark, defensible position. Periodically, its massive head would appear at one of the openings, a silent, deadly periscope. This triggered the second phase, direct, coordinated attacks. The chimp's tactics were astonishingly sophisticated. As the python's head appeared at one end of the log, Zola, the larger lieutenant, would lead a feint attack, drawing the snake's attention. He would charge, screaming and brandishing a large branch, forcing the python to focus its defensive posture on him. At that precise moment, on the other side, Kofi and Omar would strike. They didn't target the dangerous head. They targeted the body. With their heavy clubs, they delivered powerful, crushing blows to the snake's exposed coils. This wasn't a frenzied mob, it was a flanking maneuver, a classic military tactic of divide and conquer. The python was intelligent. It learned quickly, refusing to expose itself for long. So the chimpanzees changed their tactics again. They began using smaller, sharper sticks, not as clubs, but as spears, jabbing them into the openings of the log, relentlessly harassing the creature inside. The air was thick with tension, the smell of churned earth, sweat, and primate fury. A young male, too eager, got too close. The python struck, its speed still deceptive. It missed the chimp's face by inches, its fangs sinking into the branch he was holding. The splintering crack of wood served as a stark reminder of the power they were facing. The incident didn't cause them to retreat, it hardened their resolve. The turning point came nearly 3 hours in. Using their combined strength, a team of 5 males, Kofi among them, managed to roll the heavy, waterlogged log over. The python, disoriented and exposed, made a break for the dense thicket nearby. The fight was now in the open. The organized siege erupted into a swirling melee. The chimpanzees formed a circle of death around the serpent, cutting off its escape. They attacked from all sides. Some grabbed the tail, anchoring the massive reptile, while others rained blows down upon its body. The violence was extreme and personal. They were no longer just using tools. They used their teeth, their hands, their feet. They bit, they tore, they stomped. Kofi, in a display of breathtaking fury and intelligence, located a large, flat rock. Heaving it with both hands, he brought it down directly on the python's head. The sound was a sickening crunch. The snake's body went into a frenzy of spasms, its powerful coils whipping uncontrollably. But its spine was severed. It was immobilized. The threat was neutralized. But the attack did not stop. For almost another hour, the chimpanzees continued to assault the lifeless body. They systematically bit and tore at it, dismantling the creature that had taken one of their own. This was no longer about safety. It was not about food. It was a visceral, terrifying demonstration. A message being carved into the memory of the forest itself. Finally, as the afternoon sun began to dip, it was over. Exhausted, bloodied, and panting, the troop fell back. The 4-hour war had ended. As silence fell over the clearing, the scene was one of utter devastation. The forest floor was torn and scarred. The python's body, once a perfect engine of predation, was now a mangled ruin. The victors were panting, their black fur matted with dirt and the snake's blood. Several chimps nursed minor wounds, gashes from thrashing coils, scrapes from the frantic battle. The cost of their victory was etched onto their bodies. Critically, what happened next is as significant as the battle itself. The chimpanzees did not eat the python. For the tight chimps, who are skilled hunters of monkeys and small mammals, a source of protein this large would normally be a cause for celebration and feasting. But the carcass was ignored. It was left to the flies and the forest decomposers. This singular fact strips away the simple explanation of a hunt for food. It points toward a more complex, more emotionally charged motivation. Their goal was not consumption, it was annihilation. The social fabric of the troop, torn by the initial trauma, now began to reknit itself. The first act was one of communal grief. The males, one by one, approached Aya, the bereaved mother. They didn't make grand gestures. They engaged in quiet, intimate acts of comfort. A soft touch on the back. A prolonged session of grooming. An offer of a piece of fruit. They were a community in mourning, their shared violence giving way to a shared solace. For Aya, the trauma was profound. In the days that followed, researchers observed her exhibiting behaviors akin to deep depression. She was listless, foraged little, and would often sit apart from the group, staring into the spot where her infant was taken. In a poignant and heartbreaking display, she began carrying a small piece of wood, cradling it and grooming it as if it were her lost child. This surrogate baby behavior, documented in grieving chimp mothers, is a powerful testament to the depth of their emotional lives. For Kofi, the victory was a powerful political statement. He had not only defended his troop, he had led them in a successful war of extermination against a formidable enemy. His authority was now unquestionable. The bonds between him and the males who fought by his side were forged in the crucible of combat. They were no longer just a group, they were a unit, their loyalty to each other absolute. The event sent ripples through the entire forest ecosystem. The troops' behavior changed. They became more aggressive in their territorial patrols. They actively sought out and destroyed other snakes they encountered, even non-threatening species. The memory of the 4-hour war had been embedded into their culture. It became a new lesson for the next generation. We are not victims. We are the power that strikes back. The 4-hour war in Tai National Park was more than just a dramatic episode of survival. For the primatologist who documented it, it was a profound and troubling window into the chimpanzee mind. It forced a re-evaluation of the boundaries we draw between human and animal cognition. The central, unavoidable question is one of motive. Can we call this revenge? In science, anthropomorphism, attributing human emotions to animals, is a cardinal sin. And yet, the evidence here is compelling. The attack continued long after the threat was neutralized. The prey was not eaten. The sheer duration and coordinated nature of the assault suggest something far beyond a simple mobbing instinct. Renowned primatologist Frans de Waal has spent his career studying primate social intelligence. His work has demonstrated that chimpanzees possess a keen sense of fairness, a long memory for transgressions, and the capacity for what he calls retaliation. They help those who have helped them, and they punish those who have wronged them. The assault on the python appears to be an extreme, large-scale application of this principle. The snake committed an unforgivable transgression against the troop, and the troop responded with a focused, unified, and disproportionate punishment. The strategic complexity of the attack was also revelatory. This was not a mindless frenzy. It involved communication, role specialization, distractors, attackers, lookouts, and adaptive tactics that changed as the battle evolved. The use of tools as weapons, the flanking maneuvers, the shift from a siege to an open field assault, all of this points to a collective intelligence capable of sophisticated problem-solving in a high-stakes, dynamic environment. It mirrors, in a rudimentary form, the basic principles of organized warfare. This single event provides a powerful counter-narrative to the idea of a simple predator-prey dynamic. It demonstrates that prey species are not passive actors in their own survival. They can be proactive, strategic, and lethally effective in eliminating threats. The Thai chimpanzees fundamentally altered their own environment, making their territory safer for their children by waging a successful war. Ultimately, the story of this 4-hour revenge forces us to confront the origins of our own darkest impulses. Grief, rage, the desire for retribution. These are not exclusively human experiences. They may have deeper, older roots, forged in the ancient forests where our own ancestors once faced the same life or death struggles. In the weeks and months that follow the war, a new kind of peace settles over the Thai forest. It is not the peace of innocence, but the peace of a hard-won security. The chimpanzee troop, forged by trauma and unified by their violent triumph, moves through the canopy with a renewed confidence. Kofi, the alpha, remains at the helm, his leadership undisputed. He is a king who has led his people through their darkest hour and emerged victorious. His presence is a constant reassurance to his troop. Aya, the grieving mother, slowly begins to heal. The small piece of wood is eventually discarded. She reintegrates into the group's social life, her grief eased by the constant support of her family. The scar of her loss will never fade, but life, as it must, goes on. The legacy of the 4-hour war is not the mangled carcass of the python, long since reclaimed by the forest. The legacy is an idea. It's a memory burned into the troop's collective consciousness, a story that will be told not in words, but in actions, in the wider berth they give to suspicious logs, in the swift, aggressive response to any perceived threat, in the lessons taught to a new generation of infants. The event serves as a powerful, humbling reminder. We, as humans, share this planet with other nations, other intelligences whose emotional and cognitive worlds are far richer and more complex than we have ever imagined. The capacity for profound love, devastating grief, and a cold, calculating rage is not ours alone. In the deep green heart of the jungle, a family was wounded, and they responded not with fear, but with a fury so organized and so enduring, it looks disturbingly like our own. It tells us that the line between us and them, between civilization and the wild, is a fragile illusion, easily erased by the shriek of a dying infant and the call to war that follows.